Hello and welcome to Firearm Freedom. This is going to be another First Impressions video. In today's First Impressions video, we are taking a look at the Midwest Industries 516 handguard. And before we get this video started, I wanted to give a huge shout out to this video's sponsor, the Armories. A few awesome retail locations down in the Florida area. They also have a pretty solid website. I got hooked up with them way before this sponsorship as an actual customer. It's where I was able to find my Springfield TRP. That was a great experience. Their website has a variety of things and really a lot of hard to find stuff at pretty ridiculously good prices. They actually also just started offering a discount code for you guys. Firearm Freedom 5 at checkout, Firearm Freedom 5 at checkout. That gets you 5% site-wide. So it doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter how expensive it is, it'll get you 5% off, and that really does add up over time. I just had a buddy find a Silencer Co. Omega 300 there, and those are stupid hard to find with everything going on with the E-Form system. So again, check them out. If you're near them in person down in Florida, hit up one of their Florida locations and thank them for supporting my content. The Midwest SIG 516 rail. Midwest, damn it, you guys strike again. You always do, coming out with awesome stuff that I feel like no one else does, and they always seem to knock it out of the park. Of course, what are my affiliations with Midwest? They did send me this rail for free to check out. They are probably some of the coolest folks I've worked with in this industry, and also probably one of the longer ones now as far as relationships goes that I have had on the channel. They've just always been willing to support me no matter the size of my channel, and I really appreciate that. I got this awesome 516 upper. You guys saw it in a review a little while ago, and it had the quad rail on it. Now, you guys know I love the quad rail. It's not that I had an issue with that in particular. However, with the older quad rail on these 516 uppers, you have kind of the ugly SIG gas block sticking out in front of the quad rail. It looks a little interesting. Midwest actually has a few contracts for these handguards on other 516s that are out there circulating around in the world, and their handguard here is pretty cool because it actually does cover the gas block. Now, it's going to be a solid M-LOK through and through rail, so you are not going to have any pick rail sections, only M-LOK, which again, not a big deal. It slims down the gun significantly, and you still have this interesting bayonet lug, if you want it for this barrel, visible down on the bottom. Where that's cool is SIG utilized the same distance, the same length of piston for their full-size guns as well, so you will still have utilization of the bayonet lug if you want it. And as far as looks, the rail does a very good job. You have these circles up here for weight reduction, then also heat mitigation, and it just adds to the look of it. For me, I am much more partial to the pick rail. That's just me as far as mounting solutions. There's nothing wrong with M-LOK. I just have a little bit of a preference for pick rail. But in this case, I want to mount my ProTac very quickly. I didn't have a spare Scout mount, so I did have to run this kind of janky pick rail to M-LOK to the pick rail adapter on the ProTac. Ultimately, this is going to be mounted via M-LOK in the very near future once I get that shipped in. One interesting thing that I did notice about this rail, and not necessarily the rail, but the SIG 516. So this particular upper is a LE trade-in upper. These things got beat up pretty hard. And I've heard a lot of people complain about the gas block, which is where the rail sits on for your front sight post, is actually canted. And you know, I have kind of come to the realization that mine may be as well. You guys will notice how far over to the right-hand side my rear sight is, and that is to get a perfect zero. And I just feel like something is not entirely lined up. You have a great lock point here in the back of the rail. This is very reminiscent of like a 416 with how it's going to lock, or an MR556 where it's a very proprietary locking setup, but it's very strong. In this case, you have a great locking tab, cool, and then also you can get an idea of how everything is lined up with the front of your Midwest rail. As you can see, the front of mine lines up perfectly, so I don't really know what's going on here, but I might switch out the irons. I don't know, something just seems a little off the more that I shoot it as far as how everything lines up. Weirdly, this is not an issue for me with the irons, but when I threw on my EOTech, tried to zero it, I was getting some weird shifts because the EOTech, in order to be zeroed, was like on the left side of the leaf, and I'm like, ooh, that looks a little weird. So I'm running irons at this point, but as far as the strength of the rail, it's held up great. And heat mitigation, no issues at all. These rails are very, very tough to find. From what I hear with Midwest, they do these in like batch runs for their contracts, and then a few of them will hit the website. As you can imagine, it's not an incredibly sought after item. There's not a boatload of people that have these 516 uppers, but Midwest is 100% still making the rails. So they're still in circulation. They're just harder to find. And the price point is right on the money. You're coming in at about 190 bucks, which compared to everything else on the market is pretty good. I was running this with a vert grip that I had to swap to something else. So for the most recent range day that you guys saw, I was running it just bare rail. And I don't know, it was super lightweight, and I actually don't mind it at all. You have a sling QD point here in the rear, which I do have wrapped up with some goon tape, but if you did not do that, you'd be able to mount your sling in the rear portion of the rail on both sides, and then also in the front portion of the rail as well. Now, the one thing I really liked about this setup was how much further forward I can sneak my thumb and hand up without running into a very hot gas block. So especially when you're running this gun suppressed, it gives you a really nice, just kind of wider ability to get your thumb up there. But the one thing to be aware of is you still have the bottom of that gas block up in the front. It's not covered. So be cautious. The moment you start kind of sneaking your hand up there and grab pretty hard, you could be very close to a very hot gas block and not have a great day. As far as installation goes, although I can't show that here on YouTube, it is stupid easy. You are not going to have to switch out the barrel nut or anything like that. No permanent modifications. The old rail comes off, the new rail comes on, and that is about it. I would love to see Midwest, just Midwest, hear me out, try this sometime. Come out with a quad rail version of this that sneaks into the front of the gas block. I think a lot of people might really like that because it would mix the kind of cool retro aspects that the earlier 516s had, and then also a more modern, practical, and better look covering the gas block itself. Of course, I understand that this is more of a contract item, so you don't really get as much ability to play around with design because, again, there's not a huge market, believe it or not, for these rails. But ultimately, I'm loving the rail so far. I don't really have any negatives to say about it whatsoever. If you guys have any other questions about this rail or anything else on the channel, please feel free to throw them down below in the comment section, and I absolutely will get back to you. While you're down there, hit up the description for the ways to support the channel, and as always, stay tuned for more great videos coming soon.